Hi, everyone. My name is Randall Davis from the English Language Institute at the University of Utah, and I'm excited to present on the topic, making sense of online assessment and engagement tools. Let's get right into it. First of all, there are several purposes to the presentation. Number one, suggesting tools that help us assess students' language skills. Number two, identifying gaps in students' knowledge. And number three, how can we go about eliciting student feedback on the course content? And all of these help us make adjustments to our own instruction. I'd like to share a couple of thoughts in addition. That number one, technological progress has merely provided us with more efficient means for going backwards. Sometimes we think about technology and then we think about, how to use it as a secondary thought. And I think that technology really should take second stage, should not be at the forefront of what we're doing, but we need to learn how to use it in pedagogically sound ways. And another concept would be, just because a technology exists doesn't mean that it should be used. We have to think about the pedagogical rationale behind it. And what we should be doing is determining our learning goals, our instructional goals, and then select the tools that we want to use. And one of the things you want to keep in mind is don't use something just because it exists. Also, keep in mind that you should only use technology when it supports your objectives and not just because it makes you look good or it sounds nice. And one of the things that I often share in my presentations, at least in the past, is the idea of this blender, where the blender has a multiplicity of functions, but really, maybe I don't need them all. Maybe I need a blender that just has an on and off switch. I think that's really important in selecting and using technology. So what I consider is a blended approach, and I'm going to suggest that today as part of the presentation, is try to balance out technology, pedagogy, and your philosophy. What is your rationale behind using any particular technology that you have in mind? What did I think about when I selected the particular tools that I want to suggest today? Well, first of all, you have to decide, what are your instructional goals? In what way can technology support them? And what forms of technology do students have access to? Computers, the internet. Are we talking about high resource versus low resource environments? And are we dealing with a face-to-face classroom or an online classroom? And I also encourage people to often think about the one breath test. In other words, if you can't explain the service in one breath, maybe it's just too complicated to use. And I'm certainly going to spend a few more breaths in explaining some of the things today, but I certainly want to just keep that idea in mind. So the selection process of any type of online service, well, what are the pedagogical applications? What can you do with it? How easy is it to use? As I mentioned in the one breath test, the potential longevity of the service. How long has the service been up? Do you think it's going to be around next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? The next part is the variety of assessment options that are available in that particular tool. And one of the things I'm going to highlight today is analytical reports. What can each service actually provide in terms of reporting so that you can analyze the students' abilities, proficiencies, growth in the skills that you're learning? Availability for computers and mobile devices. I think that's pretty common today, and cost. And I often encourage teachers, just because something costs something, it might be just worth the expense. So the tools that I'd like to share with you are Kahoot. I don't know anyone that isn't aware of Kahoot, but I'm going to talk about the reporting features, Socrative, Plickers, Mentimeter, and then Flippity, another service that is a little bit different than the others. So let's talk about some situations. And imagine, for example, you want to get a sense of where your students are, some of their struggles, what progress have they made, and you're hoping that by pinpointing some of the issues that they have, you can customize your teaching to that particular need. Now, I think most people are aware of Kahoot. I'm not going to focus specifically on designing quizzes, but what I want to do is I want to focus on the actual reports that are available. So on this particular screen, you see right here that I have a Kahoot open up. Right over here, you see the 3 dots. And when you click on those 3 dots, it is going to open up the reporting function. When you open up the reports, and again, what I'm looking for in some type of reports is the ability, as I mentioned, to identify knowledge gaps, and then how can you take action, an action plan to actually customize your instruction to identify those needs. So when I click reports, one of the things that I noticed in Kahoot and many other services, it might suggest, oh, here is a particular question. How many students got it correct? Here in this particular example, I have listed the students' names. We use nicknames, but often shows you, for example, how many students answered the question correctly, how many didn't answer it at all. And that information right there alone can help you say, oh, these particular questions were not problematic for students, and these were. And I think when you identify those gaps, that can help suggest, how can I address this more in the classroom? And again, I mentioned that nicknames were used in this example. Also, in this particular case, and Rocky Raccoon just happens to be one of the students, but you can see actually, and I'm not interested in the really gaming, let's say, effects that Kahoot presents, but I'm more interested in these reports. For example, they can tell you in this particular case, what questions an individual student answered, how long it took them to answer the question. There could be some relationship between the amount of time they needed and the response. And again, those type of reporting features in Kahoot are often not discussed, but that's what gives you the power to adjust your teaching to the needs of your students. The next one I want to talk about is Socrative. And Socrative is a really nice online service, allows you to create multiple choice, true, false, short answer assessments. It provides you feedback in real time. And one of the things I'm going to mention in a minute is not only used for online learning, but you can actually generate printable copies of your assessments. There are things to keep in mind, as I'm going to talk about. You can only create 5 quizzes on a free plan for assessing up to 50 students at a time. I have a lot more quizzes in my account. I still have a free account, and it's interesting that many of these services, their features are constantly changing. So what might be available in the past, you might be on a legacy account that provides more features than what is available today. That's something to keep in mind. And the other thing is a simple thing. You can only have one activity running at one time. In other words, in my class, I don't have multiple classes trying to take quizzes at the same time. So how does this work? Well, here is the Socrative dashboard. You see, for example, if you want to launch a quiz that you've created already, Space Race is a type of gaming. Exit Ticket might be something you create one question. How well did you understand the lesson today? And then here are the different types of questions that you can create. So let me show you what it looks like. Here's an example of a multiple choice assessment that I created. You have the question, you can indicate the answer, you can have an explanation. But for example, in this case, it says, I'm soccer with David tonight. And it says, I'm playing with the present continuous and will play. Some people might say, well, there are 2 possible answers. So that is where Socrative allows you to choose more than one answer in that particular case. Going on, once you create a quiz or activity, you have a variety of possibilities on how you launch out that, whether you have open navigation, allows the user to, go at their own pace. Teacher paced, you might be doing an activity where you want to go a question at a time. And then there are other things, do you want to shuffle the answers? Do you want to shuffle the questions? Do you want to show them feedback at the end and so forth? And then, of course, there are other pro features that are possible as well. The nice thing I like about Socrative is that you have the ability to print out, download in PDF format, and print out a quiz. And this could be really useful. You're in a particular classroom. Most of the students have their own devices. Maybe you have a learner that feels less comfortable with technology, or you just like to do paper copies, and that's an excellent way of doing that. So what does it look like on a mobile device, like a smartphone? Well, this is what it will look like. The questions you can see with multiple choice, and then you might have some other questions that you have short answer, and you can create different types of questions within one type of quiz. At the end, you can provide feedback if you want, waiting for the next activity if there's another activity and quiz that you have coming up. In terms of live reporting, this is what I really like. So imagine that you've launched out a quiz to your students, and right now you want to watch in real time their answers. So on your computer, you can actually see the progress. That was question number 1. Again, the green is indicating correct, red is indicating the incorrect. This just means that the students completed the entire quiz. That's what it would look like at the end. And then it just slowly, you can actually see them answering throughout the quiz. I think that could be really useful for you as a teacher. And the nice thing is about exporting reports. And this is an example of where many online services are like adding new features, taking away features from free plans. But this has, even with the free version, and all of the ones I'm talking about today have a free or a premium version, has the ability to, for example, complete results in Excel. You can have student PDFs. I like that because it shows the student, you can print it out and the student can see their answers, results in PDF formats. For example, you can, and this is what I often show in class, after students take some type of diagnostic, it will actually tell them, oh, this number of students answered this one, but the answer that I was looking for in this particular case was the present continuous, but certainly will play is possible. You could choose that as a secondary or a primary answer, but I allowed just the one choice to kind of see what students were looking at, because this told me that few students see the present continuous as meaning future. So that's really nice about the results format there. Let's talk about another tool. Imagine, for example, you want to get input from students, feedback from students in your class. However, a few students have smartphones, or the school just doesn't allow them. This is where Plickers comes in. And Plickers is a real-time assessment tool, really, really nice, especially in low resource environments or where smartphones are not allowed. And what they have is each student has a card. You can see the different cards here, and I'm going to show you in a minute. Each student receives a card, and you can notice on the screen you have, for example, C and D and A and B, and all of those mean in dealing with multiple choice questions, if you see, and we're going to look at a question right now, you see a question, then the student says, I think the answer is B. Then they rotate the card so the B is facing up. So imagine, for example, you create a question like this. This is within your dashboard, and you simply want to answer this question. How well did you understand the lesson today? And they have A, B, C, and D. And on the Plickers website, you can print out cards for all of your students. Each card is a little bit unique to the other. Often what you can do is you can pass out the cards. The students can actually paste the card, let's say, in their textbook or in their notebook. And what they do is, once you launch a particular activity like this, then what you do, and this is another example, what is 2 + 2? And then you take your smartphone and you aim it at all of the cards that are held up. This represents the different students, and those answers will be registered in your account. And again, here's an example of that particular card. So each student is assigned a card number, and in Plickers, it will actually remember, once you scan across the classroom, it will be able to identify each student's answers. And the nice thing about Plickers is that, again, phone-free environment, low resource, except for you as the teacher. There are some limitations as to the number of questions you can ask, but it's a really quick tool of getting actual feedback, I think. This is what it might look at in the actual dashboard in your results, what the students answer. How well did you answer understand today's lesson? I think it's a very quick tool. They don't need phones again. All they need is the Plickers card. The next service that I'd like to talk about is actually, let's imagine that a lot of these different services have limitations on the number of people that can answer. But imagine you want a quick poll for an unlimited number of students that you don't have to spend a year to create. And one of the things I really like is something called Mentimeter. And what you see on the screen is what a short poll would look like with your phone. The nice thing is that you can create a variety of different types of questions. With the free version, you're limited. There are some limitations, but imagine in my class, at the middle of each session, I ask them two main questions for each of my class. Is this class helping you improve your grammar, your writing, your speaking, whatever class I might be teaching? And the second question is, please tell me your feelings about the class. So what does this look like in your dashboard? It's very, very simple, where you can actually create simple slides. You determine what kind of distractors you want to do. And there are a variety of different ways that you can manage your results. For example, you can use the poll and then purge the actual results and data from your survey so you can use that again. And there are a number of share features. So let's take a look at those. What happens is that once you launch out the poll, there are different ways that you can share the actual poll with students. You can use a QR code. There's actually a voting code that is associated with your particular quiz. And again, this is what it looks like. And this is what it would look like on the screen. So I often have this showing on the screen. They see the code. And as you're doing the poll, you can keep this hidden. All right. I mean, again, you can keep these results hidden from all the students in the class until you're ready to show them. And that's what I usually do. I usually do the question. The number right down here tells you how many people have taken it. So that gives you a sense of what is happening. And then you can do, in this particular case, I just wanted bubble answers, some responses to how they were feeling about the class. And then all of these answers show up here. I think it's a really quick, easy way of creating polls and feedback. And this helps me, once again, going back to the original purpose of this presentation, to help you identify how they feel about the class. What gaps do they see? So for example, in this class, maybe it would be better to have small writing activities. That's great to know. I'm not going to wait until the very end of the course to find that out when there's nothing I can do. I like to practice more reading. Well, that's really useful. I think maybe the class can be simplified and the homework reduced. So all of those, I think, are very useful tips. And again, that is Mentimeter. The last idea is, unlike some of the others, where the ones that I show, Kahoot and Socrative and Plickers and Mentimeter, all have the ability to help you identify particular gaps in students' knowledge. This one is actually, how can you come up with a tip that doesn't require you to have any login? You don't have to sign up for any particular service, but allows you to create maybe different types of flashcards like Quizlet or something like that, so that students can practice their vocabulary. So this site is called Flippity, and Flippity has many different features, but the one thing I'm going to be looking at is this one, Flippity flashcards. Imagine, for example, you want to create flashcards so that students can review vocabulary, definitions, and listen to the words as well. So the nice thing about this is, again, it doesn't require any login. So in this particular case, I will go down to instructions. And again, I'm building flashcards. Then I get to this step. This is where Flippity has a template that will actually build and generate these flashcards. And all you need is a Google account. So sign into your Google account as you click on this template. Once you click on the template, it'll say, hey, just to let you know that we're going to copy this template over into your Google Docs. So I should say, yeah, make a copy. Then at this point, you can actually, if I'm creating, let's say I'm working on the simple past tense, I have these verbs and I made this very simple. I have the past tense and I have sample sentences. And so you can actually write those in. Once you write those in, again, you're only using a Google Doc, your Google account. You don't have to sign up for any Flippity account. And then what you do is, and again, all the instructions are in Flippity, you share it and you publish it to the web. You take that link that is there, and then you share that link with your students. So what you can do is you can share this really long link, or you can take the QR code and share that with your students. And so when your students open it up, they're going to see these flashcards. So in other words, on one side, it'll say eat. And then when they flip it, they're going to see ate. We ate pizza for lunch.
Eat. We ate pizza for lunch today. Eat.
But that is the audio, and it sounds really crisp. In other words, what is in the flashcards, if I just go back, you're going to notice that the designers of these cards actually have an embedded feature that will actually translate, actually put into audio anything that you select. And again, I selected English for the actual voice. So that's what that looks like. And again, there are different activities that are associated with it. You can actually, students can see it in this view where they see the word and they see the sentence. But the really nice thing is, again, is this audio feature which generates. And again, it doesn't sound like a chipmunk. It sounds very natural, crisp audio that students can practice vocabulary, and they can actually practice the pronunciation as well. Well, there's certainly many, many, many different alternatives out there that we could all think about. And certainly what I wanted to share were some of the possible tools that you could use. And to share with you a last idea, this is one of my favorite quotes. It says, the technology itself is not transformative. It's the school, the pedagogy, the teacher that is transformative. And the idea is that I think the key to using any of these type of tools lies in the ability to connect technology and sound pedagogy together. Well, I want to thank you for joining this presentation. And again, you could reach out to me if you have any questions about making sense of online assessment and engagement tools. Thank you very much.